first, I'm Yuli Astutik with the ID number is T2019-63102. Well, now I will explain you about Chapter 3, Equivalence and Equivalent Effect. In this chapter, there is 4 theory. For the first theory is from Roman Jacobson, for the second is from Nida, and then for the third from Newmark, and for the last theory is from Kohler. Okay, go to the first theory from Roman Jacobson. The nature of linguistic meaning and equivalence. In this seminar paper on linguistic aspects of translation structuralism, Roman Jacobson describes 3 kinds of translation. For the first is intralingual, and then for the second is interlingual, and then for the third is intersemiotic. With interlingual referring to translation between 2 different written languages, Jacobson goes on to examine key issues of this type of translation, notably linguistic meaning and equivalence. Jacobson follows the relation set out by Schaefer between the signifier or the spoken and written signal and the signified or the concept signified. Together, the signifier and signified from the linguistic sign, but that sign is arbitrary or unmotivated. Okay, from a linguistic and semiotic angle, Jacobson approaches the problem of equivalence with the following famous definition. Equivalence in differences is the cardinal problem of language and the pivotal concern of linguistics. In Jacobson's discussion, the problem of meaning and equivalence thus focuses on differences in the structure and terminology of languages rather than on any inability of one language to render a message that has been written in another verbal language. Okay, go to the next theory from Nida and the science of translating. Nida attempts to move translation or Bible translation in his case into a more scientific era by incorporating recent work in linguistics. Nida's more systematic approach borrows theoretical concept and terminology both from semantics and pragmatic and from non-Chomsky work and syntactic structure which formed the theory of generative transformation grammar. Nida's adaptation of transmissional grammar model and scientific method to analyze meaning in this work and on Bible translating. And for the next is theory from Newmark, semantic and communicative translation. Newmark indicates the semantic translation differs from literal translation in that it respects context, interprets, and even explains our metaphors. For instance, literal translation, on the other hand, means word for word in its extreme version and even in its weaker form, sticks very closely to ST lexis and syntax. Importantly, literal translation is held to be the best approach if there is a conflict between the 2 forms of translation, or namely is semantics translation would result in an abnormality or would not secure equivalent effect in the TL. Then communicative translation solved we not. Okay, Newmark terms semantic translation and communicative translation have often been quoted in the literature of translation theory, but they have generally received for less discussion than Nida's formal and dynamic equivalence. This may be because despite Newmark relevance Chris terms of equivalent effect, they raise some of the same point concerning the translation process and the importance of the TT reader. Okay, for the last theory is from Kohler, correspondence and equivalence. In attempt to answer this question, Kohler goes on to describe 5 different types of equivalence. For the first is denotative equivalence is related to equivalence of the extra-linguistic content of a text. Other literature scholar calls this content in invariance. For the second is connotative equivalence is related to the lexical choice, especially between near synonyms. Scholar sees this type of equivalence as illusory, being referred to as stylistic equivalence. And then for the third is text normative equivalences. Is related to text types with different kinds of text behaving in different ways. This is closely linked to word by Canadian race. Okay, for the next is pragmatic equivalence or communicative equivalence is oriented toward the receiver or the text or message. This is needed as dynamic equivalence. And then for the last is formal equivalence, which is related to the form and aesthetic of the text, includes wordplays and the individual stylistic features of the IST. It is elsewhere referred to as expensive, expensive equivalence, and it is not to be confused with neither term. Well, maybe just that explanation from me. Thank you very much for your nice attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you.